Hi creative friends, this is Soraya and thank you so much for being here. So I'm going to be working in my color journal today and I'm just going to do a very quick flip through. This is my cover, which I went with neutrals. This is my blue slash very cool spread. This is my hot, hotter and hottest spread. This is magenta, that's green. And this is the last video that I made where I went with this ink over here, which is basically Payne's Gray, and I went very neutral. And when I did this video, I talked about a color palette that is very versatile, and I decided, okay, I'm going to use that color palette on this spread. Now, the color palette that I talked about is titanium white, Payne's Gray, and yellow ochre. You can make a few substitutions with that. So I have this cashew, but I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to go with a titanium white. And the reason why is because generally I like the cashew because it's a very warm white. It's got very yellow undertones. And if you, I don't know if the camera can pick up on that, but this is like a neutral to cool white, and this is a very yellowy white. So because I'm gonna use the yellow ochres, I'm not gonna use the cashew. I'm gonna go with a titanium white, and I'm gonna use my Stabilo. It's just a graphite all black Stabilo, and this is gonna be used in like I'm going to substitute this for my Payne's Gray. You can also use like this Waverly chalk paint and ink. So, you know, like you can go, as long as it's like the similar hue and undertones, etc., you can make substitutions. And I do have a couple of different cheapy yellows over here. And I'm going to just go with the Marigold, but I might use a couple of these as well. And what I'm going to do now, I do have a lot of stuff on the page. So this is not like a plain white page. So I'm going to try to use that to my advantage. And, you know, I love what's going on here. Like I'm going to bring this up closer. There's tea bags, there's dictionary pages. I think there's some sheet music over here. There's cardstock. And I might even have some of my own collage over here underneath the tea bag, so they're a bit muted. So there's a lot of beautiful stuff going on, but I am only going to use these 3 colors, and it is going to be a bit of a challenge for me because I know at some point I'm going to want to kind of like, hey, I need my orange or whatever, you know, but, you know, this journal is a lot for experimenting and learning and just trying out different things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to sketch in a face, a figure, whatever. And I might end up using some of my own handmade collage at the very end, but I am going to stick to these very, you know, limited art supplies when I'm doing the spread. So I think what I'm gonna do is just make a big, like a big face over here. And because I'm using such a limited range of materials, I want to retain as much of what's already there as possible. Because, you know, it's not like I can use other colors and materials for this spread. So, okay, I might have made that too big. So let's see here. And this is the great thing about using a Stabilo is you just use your paper towel and water, and it just like it erases it. It's so crazy. So let me see here. And I'm gonna keep like some of the neck is gonna be like and I gotta figure out something to do over here. And I don't know if I want another figure or if I want a sun, or I'm not sure. Let me see. Do I want another figure or do I want a sun? Actually, I was going to make a sun, but I think I'm going to make another figure, and it's going to be a kind of a smaller, so it's not going to be to scale, like it's not going to be in proportion to this figure. And I think I'm going to make like a robed kind of a figure. And you know what? I think I want the figure to kind of like go like that. Because like I said, I want to retain a lot of what's already on the page because I'm not going to be allowed to use any other colors. And a lot of times when we restrict the color or the materials that we're using, so just say you do this exercise, which is what I'm doing. You just say, okay, I'm only going to use these 3 materials. I'm only going to use these 3 colors. It might seem really restrictive in the beginning, but what it does is it forces us to become more creative, more daring, to step outside the box, because I can't go to my normal go-tos, which is like, oh, I want to put my burnt sienna for the face. I can't do that. So now I'm going to have to think, okay, how am I going to, make a facial tone? How am I going to, what am I going to do, etc., etc. So it does force us to become more creative, really. And I know it doesn't seem like that in the beginning, but it really honestly does. So that's why it's good to try out different prompts and exercises, because the stuff that we learn from them is really invaluable. So all I'm doing is I put some titanium white on my palette, and now I put a yellow, and I'm going to mix it in varying degrees. But let me just, I'm just going to ask myself the question, like, what should I do over here? Because I do want to retain a lot of the stuff that's already on the page, the background, but I also don't want it to be too much. I don't want this to compete with this, because if everything's a star, nothing's going to be the star type of situation. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of like make a little like a design over here and keep that part. And then for the rest of it, I'm going to actually use this yellow, and because I'm using this Stabilo, I can mix this graphite up, this black graphite. I can mix it with the yellow, and that's going to give me a really neutralized kind of a yellow. And I don't think I want to keep that pink because it's competing too much with this over here. Now I am going to ask myself, what should I do with the background? And I don't know, but I think I'm going to go with a titanium white and just make it like really, really white. I don't know. I thought about doing a gray, but that's kind of a safe choice. So I don't know yet, but I'm asking myself the question. And what I find is that when I ask myself the question, then I've already allowed my mind to figure out a solution while I'm working. You know, because like if I ask myself the question, my mind is trying to figure out the answer to it, even if I'm not aware of it. And then hopefully as I continue working, something's gonna kind of click and I'm gonna go, oh, I'm gonna make the background this color, or whatever the question is I'm asking. So I really like the moodiness of this. I do. I'm really liking that. But I don't know if this is too yellow and it needs to be kind of grayed down a little bit. Now there's a richness to this, and this is what I meant with, you know, using this color palette. You can do 100 paintings like as demos. You know, they can be really small, but if you like make 100 different paintings, and they could just be abstract, but you know, use different proportions of your palette, so titanium white, yellow, ochre, Payne's gray. Use like different proportions and you will get 100 paintings that are all completely different. Now the first 10 or 20 that you do, they might all look very similar, but like I said, it's going to force you to think outside the box. And when you you know, when you are working with very limited supplies, I don't have that like leeway and luxury really of saying, oh, I want to you know, use my burnt sienna for the face, because that's my normal go-to. Just as an example, you know, I'm forced to kind of think outside the box. So I am thinking like, what should I do with the face, with the faces? I might leave this one abstract actually. So I'm gonna make this black hair, well, Payne's gray, or my graphite pencil, but I'm gonna allow some of the background to show through. So in some places it's transparent, and I want that. Okay, so now I am thinking about the background and this face over here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start sketching in some features on this face, but I'm gonna leave that face abstract, and that kind of, well, I'm gonna leave it abstract for now. I might change my mind later, but for right now, I'm just going to sketch in the features of this face over here. And let me see here. Now this is going to be a bit tricky for me because I'm going to have to figure out, you know, how am I going to fill in the face? And I think I'm going to go with the yellow and the white. The eyes, I'm going to keep the eyes using my Stabilo. Okay, so I'm not going to use any other, I'm not going to use any other materials, even though I really, really, really want to grab my Pitt pen and kind of make the eyes, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to kind of just, you know, force myself to use what I have. And I'm going to use a very fine tip brush. And, you know, because when I wet this, it's going to activate it, and it's going to get like darker. So let's see here. I don't think I even want to use that brush. I think I'm going to use this brush over here. So, you know, when I do this with the water, it's kind of like activating the Stabilo. So it's kind of like a marker. I mean, obviously the marker is still going to have, you're going to have more control with it, but this is actually really close and I'm really liking it. So we're just going to make do here. And I think what I want to do with the background is maybe go with a white. I'm still kind of wondering if that's the right thing to do, but what I'm gonna do for right now is work on the face here a little bit, and I'm gonna mix the titanium white. And you can get an infinite number of shades and tones by using these three colors. Okay, so I do want to retain a lot of the background here because I'm not going to be able to get like normally I would reach for, say, a blue, and I'd want to make the shadows like on the face and stuff, but I can't do that. So I'm just gonna kind of and I'm gonna keep the white that I have there that's already like on there from the collage. I'm gonna use that as well. And let's see here, just bring in, so you guys, and I've mentioned this before, I think, when I'm kind of wondering, like, you know, where should my lighter colors go? Where should my, you know, darker tones go when I'm modeling the face? I think about when I'm applying makeup, and I think, okay, you know, where would I put my contour? Where would I put, you know, this, that, etc. And, you know, it helps me if I look at things in that way. It's just a really quick and easy and kind of like almost intuitive way that, you know, I can work, because I know, you know, I know when I use makeup, like I know where I'm putting everything and why. So it helps me. And that's just kind of like a cheat thing I do to figure it out, like a cheat code, I guess. And I'm gonna bring a little bit of, And I'm gonna work on the lips a little bit, but I don't want to, get like too fussy with this. And I'm gonna go with the yellow. Now, obviously, normally I wouldn't go with a yellow for the lips. I would go for, you know, a pink, a red, a brown, even a blue, but I wouldn't go for a yellow. But, you know, this is gonna force me to kind of like be more creative here and just think outside the box and actually I'm gonna add a little, ooh, that was a heavy hand right there. I didn't mean to do that, but okay, I guess it's not gonna be yellow lips. I guess it's gonna be more of this, which I actually prefer. The yellow lips weren't looking quite right, so that looks a little bit more, like a little better to me. And so I hope you can see how this is like, you know, really forcing me really to think outside the box and, you know, do things I wouldn't normally do and not fall into the same, like, you know, patterns that I normally do. Like, oh, I'm going to use my burnt sienna for the face, and oh, I'm going to use my blue Stabilo, which I love my blue Stabilo, by the way. I really do. And now when I go back to using it, I'm going to be so grateful because I'm really itching to get a blue Stabilo and put it like in the shadows of the hair and the face. And I'm really wanting to do that, but I'm not going to. Okay, so I'm happy with the lips like that. And now what I'm gonna do is I am going to put in the whites of the eyes here. Just kind of bring it to life a little bit. I don't want to get too fussy. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just put some interest there. And you guys, I think I'm gonna go with a white for the background. I really think that that's what I'm called to do here. And if it doesn't work out, I can try to maybe make a gray, but I'm gonna go with the white. I think it's gonna be a really, it's just gonna make everything kind of pop. At least that's my hope. That's what I'm hoping is gonna happen, and I think it will. It's really gonna like, okay. So let's give it a try. Let's see. I'm really gonna clean my brush out because I don't want to get any of the yellow. I want it to be just white. And when you work with a very limited palette, everything's gonna harmonize because all the colors that you're mixing are gonna be a combination of the colors that you're using. Now, I have my background, which is adding stuff that's gonna be different if you are just using white paper. It's going to be different. You're not going to have all the variations that I have with this built up background. But even so, all the colors that you use are going to be very harmonious. And so you don't have to worry as much, like, is everything going to match? Is it going to, you know, is it going to clash? Is it going to be weird? You're not going to have to worry about those things because, you know, all the colors that you use are going to be a variation, a mixture of those colors that you're using. In this case, it's titanium white, yellow ochre, and Payne's gray. So I have to tell you, I am really loving the white, but I think it's a little bit too stark. And what I'm going to do is I'm still going to go with it, but I'm going to use my pencil to make some kind of maybe marks on the background. And because it's my Stabilo, I can just go straight into the wet paint. And it's not going to really... It's actually gonna enhance it. It's gonna enhance the wetness, enhances the Stabilo. It activates it, I should say. So I hope you guys try out this palette, or at least a variation of it like I did, and just experiment. And you know, you can make... That's one of the things I learned from when I took a color theory course many years ago. And the teacher was really good, and she was obsessed with color. Well, to the point where I was like, oh my God, I don't want to mix another gray. It's going to just drive me batty. But one of the things I learned is that, you know, if you do, say, 100 small paintings, and when I say paintings, I mean, you know, you just draw little blocks. They could be as small as, you know, like 2 by 4 inches, or, you know, 3 by 5 inches. They don't have to be big. And you can just make abstract patterns, but you use a very limited palette, like, say, titanium white, yellow ochre, Payne's gray, and you make 100 different paintings using all of these 3 colors in different proportions, and you will see the variation that you get. You are going to get paintings that look completely different. And you know, once you keep on working on it, you are going to become more creative and step outside the box, because you're going to be like, oh, I already did this, so now I'm going to try something different. And like, I really am loving some of the neutrals that are coming out of this. It's just really beautiful. Now what I'm going to do is get my Stabilo and just like go into it, like... Okay, and I think I'm going to drag some of my Stabilo into this white here, and just kind of like... just make some interesting marks. It doesn't have to be, you know, anything out of the ordinary. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to mean anything. It could just be like, I'm just adding interest, you know. I'm just kind of breaking up this white a little bit. And that's why I used to use titanium white all the time. It was like, you know, I used it as my go-to. But then about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, I switched to this cashew because I really love the warmer white. So to me, this white is like really stark, but it's forcing me to now like think in different ways. Because maybe if I use the cashew, I wouldn't think it was too stark, and I wouldn't want to kind of bring in some of these gray marks here. Okay, you guys, I think I'm gonna call this done, and actually, I am really pleased with it. I hope that you guys have learned something from it and are gonna, maybe experiment with a limited palette. And this one is a great one to try. It's yellow ochre, titanium white, and Payne's gray. So if you've watched all the way to the end, thank you so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.